Well, where does that bring us? It brings us into chaos and confusion in local authorities. And of course, one of the big problems coming to the surface at the moment is that many authorities in UK are heading rapidly towards bankruptcy. The BBC's report on it is here. I couldn't resist just showing a little bit of their image. Vital services or financial ruin, England's town hall dilemma. And if we bring in that text again, it says from bin collections and street lighting to child protection and elderly care, councils provide services we all use, but in England more and more in danger of going bust. BBC Panorama has followed the struggles of one such authority and the people who rely on it. Now, I'm going to say I haven't seen the detail of BBC Panorama, but the BBC's reporting simply fails to get into the detail of what's actually happening with these councils. But if we have a look at some of the key points that they flag up, if we press the button, we should be able to bring in the arrow. There we go. Funding for councils across England is calculated on census information from 13 years ago. And then it says Havering has 10% more people living in the borough than 2011. This is key because the country has got a huge increase in the number of people now living in UK, but this is one of the subjects the BBC doesn't want to discuss. It also says that 70% of that particular council spending goes on social care for adults and children, and that is a topic the UK column has been warning about for a great many years. We've also got legal changes in 2015, the number of young people in England eligible for education, health and care plans, part funded by the councils, has doubled to more than 500,000. So we have more and more problems in basic education. And then another statement here, in 10 years, the amount spent per person on children's services by town halls has risen from £120 to £212. 77% increase, and equivalent adult social care spend is up from 252 to 372. If we do a crude analysis of what's happening here, we've simply got the costs of breakdown. We can't look after our children, we can't look after our elderly people. We've got a lot of people with emotional trouble, physical and mental health problems, and all of this costs money. We are looking at society that has not broken down. We're looking at society that is being broken down, its policy. And if we move on to a slightly different area, but still with local councils, we've got a March 2024 report just out on the low traffic neighbourhoods. So this is a research report which the government has commissioned as to how it is all going. You can see the detail of it here, but we've just pulled out a little bit of the detail to have a look at. So if we bring the first bit on screen, it says stakeholders across the sample interviewed felt that the LTNs were introduced in a rush. Stakeholders in transport-related organisations thought there was a disconnect between the transport sector's view of the LTNs and those of the public. So we've got confusion and chaos. And then lastly down here, stakeholders across the sample stressed that they do not yet know the impact of the LTNs. So this is all government policy that's been absolutely rushed in, and now we're seeing the fruits are more confusion and chaos between the public and transport providers and other so-called stakeholders. But if we go to conclusions here, we've got this one. While the review of existing evidence showed that LTN schemes have several positive impacts, albeit with more uncertainty in terms of economic ones, this remains largely unrecognised by stakeholders or residents in the 4 schemes where the survey research was conducted. Apologies, a couple of typos there, but we're talking uncertainty about the schemes. And then it says low awareness of the schemes amongst residents and uncertainty about benefits does not automatically translate into widespread opposition. So the government showing its fearful here that people that are now challenging these low traffic schemes are they're not actually forcing enough because the government thinks it's just under control. People are pushing back, but not enough to cause the government problems. And if we bring in this last conclusion again, in summary, this research has found a mixed picture in terms of LTN's measurable impacts, at least in the short term, plus a degree of uncertainty in terms of perceived impact. These are related factors and underline the importance of collecting robust evidence over time, as well as achieving better communications. That should be. Being able to demonstrate positive impacts ought to improve the reputation of LTNs. So too would improvements to community engagement, awareness and understanding. So if we read through that text in a more general way, the public really don't understand what all this is about, and they need to be properly educated and convinced. The government's got their best interests at heart, but unfortunately the public not quite bright enough to understand what's going on. And if we bring in a little bit of commentary from the political scene, we've got Louise High here, MP, Labour Shadow Transport Secretary. She said the publication of this LTN guidance was a blatant and desperate attempt to distract people from a government that has, quote, run out of road. Well, okay, a little bit of a joke there. But what interests us is that if we go back to 2013, and we just bring that in on screen, we've got Nicholas Bowles MP, who was quoted at that time in The Guardian and elsewhere, that the Prime Minister and his deputy, Nick Clegg, want their people power revolution to unleash chaotic effects across local communities. He said chaotic, therefore, in our vocabulary, he's talking about the Conservatives, is a good thing. And if we bring in his fellow colleague here, Danny Kruger, so Danny was a one-time advisor, and he was forced to resign as a Tory candidate for Sedgefield after he was quoted as saying that the Conservatives plan to introduce a period of creative destruction in the public services. Now, I'm going to say, if we look out of the window at what's happening in our public services, we're absolutely seeing breakdown everywhere we look. Breakdown in education, breakdown in the budgetary system, breakdown in road repairs, breakdown in social services and health. This is not accidental, this is planned, and these men were warning what was actually going to come. So if we bring in Eric Pickles, because at the time he was the local government secretary, he didn't leave any doubt about what the Conservatives were going to do. He said, we're going to shake up the balance of power in this country, we're going to change the nature of the Constitution, be in no doubt about our commitment to localism. I know I look like an unlikely revolutionary, but the revolution starts here. So I'll have a question for you in a minute, Alex, on this one, but I'm also going to add what was being released around the same time was information talking about both Labour and the Conservatives using the work of activist and revolutionary Saul Alinsky. So this was a report on Labour, was talking about what Labour was doing. And it was also pointing out that the philosophy of the political action was theorized by American activist Saul Alinsky in the 1930s. So what was Saul Alinsky? Well, he was a radical. He wanted major change in society. He was very happy to praise Lucifer, and this is the agenda that both political parties are now introducing into the UK. Let's have a look at the Conservatives, because they were also labelled in this expose of what was happening. And here at the bottom, we can see that for the Conservatives, they were using Saul Alinsky and Paulo Freire. So what was this about? Well, it was about changing the organisation of basic society, using community groups in order to destabilise and bring in a turbulence through which the main globalist policy could appear. And if we bring Saul Alinsky's book on screen, here it is, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. You can get this quite easily as a PDF, and I think most people will be shocked at the viewpoints expressed in this book. So, Alex, very, very quickly, to me, it's no accident that we've got this chaos unleashed in our society, because this is the smokescreen through which the main globalist policies are going to come.
Quite so, Brian. It's not just in the modern era with Marxism, revolutionary spirit, that this has been said. It's been the main criticism levelled at such thinking down the ages, ancient Gnosticism and onwards, that this thinking centres around must destroy, with no idea of what to rebuild next. Many Alinskyites in Britain, America, and elsewhere will openly say, to heck with what comes next. What's important first is to tear down. If you want a two-word summary by the masterful James Lindsay with an AY, previously interviewed by UK Column, and many good talks of his on YouTube, a two-word summary by him, I would say the world expert speaker now on the problem of Alinskyites agitation, it is that it stops at the utterance, not that. Whatever I see in culture, in history, in government, not that. Mustn't have any religion, mustn't have any morals, to hell with it all. And this is now coming through the Conservatives. It's blue Marxism. And I'm starting to say to people lately that blue Marxism from the Conservatives turns out to be more potent than its red Marxist cousin.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. Well, we can discuss more on that subject in